英日対訳、名作で英語を学べるシリーズ④、杜子春、芥川龍之介。この音声は、Cefr B1 相当、TOEIC リスニング&リーディングテスト500から600点程度の学習者向けです。本書を開きながらお聞きください。まずはリスニング、次にシャドーイング、最後に音読に挑戦してみましょう。単語リスト、覚えておきたいフレーズ、TOEIC 登録商標マーク形式の練習問題は書籍に収録しています。YouTube 概要欄から書籍をご覧いただけます。それでは物語の世界を楽しみながら英語を学んでいきましょう。
杜子春. It was an evening in spring. Under the west gate of Luoyang, the capital of Tang, China, a young man was looking up at the sky. His name was杜子春. He used to be the son of a rich man. However, he had spent all his money. Now he was so poor that he struggled to live every day. At that time, Luoyang was the most crowded and successful city in the country. Many people and carriages were still passing through the street. The bright golden sunset filled the gateway. The silk hats of old men, the gold earrings of Turkish women, and the colorful reins of white horses moved continuously. The scene was as beautiful as a painting. However,杜子春leaned against the wall of the gate. He just kept looking at the sky blankly. In the sky, a thin moon floated softly in the light mist. It was faint and white, looking almost like a fingernail mark. The sun is setting and I am hungry. Besides, no place will let me stay tonight. If I have to suffer like this, it might be better to jump into the river and die.杜子春had been thinking these dark thoughts for a while. Suddenly, an old man with one squinted eye stopped in front of him. He cast a large shadow on the gate under the setting sun. He looked closely at杜子春face and asked rudely, "What are you thinking about?" "Me? I have no place to sleep tonight, so I am wondering what to do." The old man's question was so sudden that杜子春looked down and answered honestly. "I see. That is sad," said the old man. He thought for a moment. Then he pointed at the sunset on the street. "I will tell you something useful. Stand in this sunset. When your shadow falls on the ground, dig at the spot where your head is tonight. A cart full of gold should be buried there." "Is that true?"杜子春was surprised and looked up. But the old man was already gone. There was no sign of him anywhere. Meanwhile, the moon in the sky grew whiter. A few early bats were flying above the busy street. Within a single day,杜子春became the richest man in Luoyang. He dug at the spot of his shadow at midnight as the old man had told him. He found a huge pile of gold, more than enough to fill a large cart.杜子春bought a grand house immediately and began to live a luxury life like Emperor Xuanzong. He ordered expensive wine and rare fruit. He planted special peonies that changed color 4 times a day. He let white peacocks walk freely in his garden. He collected precious jewels, ordered fine silk clothes, made carriages from fragrant wood, and bought furniture made of ivory. If I listed all his luxuries, the story would never end. When people heard the rumors, former friends who used to ignore him on the street started visiting him every day. Their numbers grew every day. Within 6 months, almost every famous scholar and beautiful woman in Luoyang was visiting杜子春house.杜子春held lavish parties for these guests every day. Words could not describe how grand those parties were. To give a small example,杜子春drank Western wine from golden cups while watching a wizard from India swallow swords. Around them, 20 women played flutes and harps rhythmically. 10 of them wore jade lotus flowers in their hair, and 10 wore agate peony flowers. However, even a large fortune has limits.杜子春money began to run out after 1 or 2 years. People were cold-hearted. The friends who visited him every day suddenly stopped greeting him on the street. Finally, in the spring of the 3rd year,杜子春became penniless again. Not a single house in the wide city of Luoyang offered him shelter. No one would even give him a cup of water. One evening he went back to the west gate of Luoyang and stood there helplessly looking at the sky. Then the old man with one squinted eye appeared again from nowhere. "What are you thinking about?" the old man asked. Toshishin looked down in shame and stayed silent for a moment. But the old man kindly repeated the question. Toshishin answered timidly, "I have no place to sleep tonight, so I am wondering what to do." "I see. That is sad," the old man said. "I will tell you something useful. Stand in this sunset. When your shadow falls on the ground, dig at the spot where your chest is tonight. A cart full of gold should be buried there." After saying this, the old man disappeared into the crowd again. The next day, Toshishin became the richest man in the world once again. At the same time, he began his wasteful lifestyle again. The peonies in the garden, the sleeping white peacocks, and the wizard swallowing swords, everything was just like before. Therefore, the vast amount of gold ran out completely again in about 3 years. "What are you thinking about?" The old man with one squinted eye came to Toshishin for the third time and asked the same question. Toshishin was standing under the west gate of Luoyang, looking blankly at the crescent moon through the mist. "Me? I have no place to sleep tonight, so I am wondering what to do." "I see. That is sad. I will tell you something useful. Stand in this sunset. When your shadow falls on the ground, dig at the spot where your stomach is tonight. A cart full of—" Toshishin raised his hand suddenly and interrupted the old man. "No, I do not need money anymore." "You do not need money anymore? I see. So you are tired of living a luxury life." The old man looked closely at Toshishin's face with suspicion. "No, I am not tired of luxury. I am tired of human nature," Toshishin said bluntly with an unhappy face. "That is interesting. Why are you tired of human nature?" "Humans are cold-hearted. When I was rich, they flattered me. But once I became poor, they did not even show a kind face. Thinking about this, even if I become rich again, it means nothing to me." The old man smiled suddenly after listening to Toshishin. "I see. You understand things very well for a young man. So, do you plan to live a peaceful life even if you are poor?" Toshishin hesitated for a moment. Then he looked up with firm eyes and said to the old man, "I cannot do that either. So I want to become your disciple and learn magic. Do not hide it from me. You are a powerful immortal wizard. If you were not, you could not make me the richest man in the world overnight. Please be my teacher and teach me your strange magic." The old man frowned and stayed silent for a while as if thinking about something. Then he smiled again and accepted kindly. "Indeed, I am an immortal wizard named Tekanshi, living on Mount Gabi. When I first saw your face, you looked smart, so I made you rich twice. Since you want to become an immortal wizard so much, I will accept you as my disciple." Toshishin was extremely happy. Before the old man finished talking, Toshishin touched his head to the ground and bowed many times. "Do not thank me yet," Tekanshi said. "Whether you can become a great wizard depends on you. Anyway, come with me to the deep mountains of Mount Gabi first. Look, here is a bamboo cane on the ground. Let us ride this and fly through the sky." Tekanshi picked up a piece of green bamboo and recited a spell. He and Toshishin sat on the bamboo like riding a horse. Surprisingly, the bamboo cane turned into a dragon and flew high into the clear spring evening sky toward Mount Gabi. Toshishin was terrified and looked down carefully. Underneath them, he could only see dark blue mountains in the sunset light. He could no longer find the west gate of Luoyang. Meanwhile, Tekanshi let his white hair blow in the wind and sang a poem loudly in a high voice. "In the morning I play by the northern sea, in the evening I reach Sungwu. The blue snake in my sleeve shows my brave spirit. 3 times I entered Yiyang but no one recognized me. Singing loudly, I fly over Dongting Lake. The green bamboos soon landed on Mount Gabi. They were on a wide, flat rock near a deep valley. It was very high, and the Big Dipper constellation hung in the sky, shining like large bowls. Since no humans lived there, it was completely quiet. The only sound was the night wind blowing through a twisted pine tree on the cliff behind them. When they landed on the rock, Takanshi made Toshishin sit under the cliff. He said, "I am going to heaven now to see the Queen Mother of the West. Sit here and wait for my return. Many evil spirits will probably appear to trick you while I am away. But no matter what happens, you must not speak a word. If you say even one word, you can never become an immortal wizard. Remember this. Even if heaven and earth split open, stay silent." "I will be fine," Toshishin replied. "I will never make a sound. Even if I lose my life, I will stay silent." "Good. Hearing that makes me relieved. I am leaving now." The old man said goodbye, sat on the bamboo cane again, and disappeared straight into the dark sky over the sharp mountains. Toshishin sat alone on the rock, quietly looking at the stars. About an hour passed, and the cold night air began to pass through his thin clothes. Suddenly, a voice shouted from the sky, "Who is sitting there?" However, Toshishin remembered the wizard's instructions and did not answer at all. After a short while, the same voice sounded again, threatening him sternly, "If you do not answer, prepare to lose your life right now." Toshishin remained silent, of course. Suddenly, a tiger with glowing eyes jumped onto the rock from somewhere. It stared at Toshishin and roared loudly. At the same time, the pine branches above swung wildly. From the top of the cliff behind him, a huge white snake descended. It stuck out its red tongue like fire and moved closer. However, Toshishin sat calmly without moving his eyebrows. The tiger and the snake glared at each other, waiting for a chance to take the prey. Then both attacked Toshishin at the same time. Toshishin thought he would be killed instantly by the tiger's teeth or the snake's tongue. But at that moment, the tiger and snake vanished like mist into the night wind. Only the pine tree on the cliff made a low sound in the wind as before. Toshishin breathed a sigh of relief and waited to see what would happen next. Then a strong wind blew, and dark clouds covered the whole area. Purple lightning split the darkness, and heavy thunder began to roar. A waterfall of heavy rain suddenly poured down. Toshishin sat bravely in this severe storm. The sound of wind, the splash of rain, and the constant flashes of lightning filled the mountain. It felt as if Mount Gabi might collapse. Then a deafening thunder crack sounded, and a bright red pillar of fire fell from the dark clouds directly toward Toshishin's head. Toshishin covered his ears unconsciously and fell face down on the flat rock. When he opened his eyes, the sky was clear again. The Big Dipper constellation shone brightly over the distant mountains like before. The terrible storm was just another trick played by evil spirits during Takanshi's absence. Toshishin felt relieved, wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and sat up again on the rock. Before his sigh fully disappeared, a majestic divine general appeared in front of him. He wore golden armor and was about 30 feet tall. The general held a 3-pronged spear in his hand. He pointed the tip at Toshishin's chest, glared fiercely, and shouted, "Listen, fellow. Who are you? I have lived on this Mount Gabi since the creation of the world. You entered this place alone without fear. You cannot be an ordinary human. If you value your life, answer me immediately." However, Toshishin kept his mouth firmly shut, following the old man's words. "Will you not answer? Fine. Do as you wish. Instead, my soldiers will cut you into pieces." The general raised his spear high and summoned the sky over the distant mountain. the darkness opened and countless divine soldiers filled the sky like clouds. They flashed their spears and swords, ready to attack him all at once. Toshichin almost screamed in surprise when he saw this. However, he remembered Tekanshi's words and tried his best to stay silent. Seeing that Toshichin was not afraid, the general grew furious. "You stubborn fool. If you refuse to answer, I will take your life as promised." As soon as he shouted this, the general flashed his three-pronged spear and stabbed Toshichin to death with one thrust. He laughed loudly, shaking Mount Gabi, and disappeared into nowhere. At that moment, the countless divine soldiers also vanished like a dream with the night wind. The cold Big Dipper constellation shone on the flat rock again. The pine tree on the cliff made a low sound as before. However, Toshichin was already dead, lying on his back on the rock. Toshichin's body lay on the rock, but his soul left his body quietly and went down to the bottom of hell. Between this world and hell, there was a path called the Dark Cave Road. Cold wind like ice blew wildly through the dark sky all year round. Toshichin floated like a fallen leaf in the wind for a while. Soon he arrived in front of a grand palace with a sign reading Shinra Palace. Many demons stood in front of the palace. As soon as they saw Toshichin, they surrounded him and dragged him before the stairs. On top of the stairs sat a king wearing a black robe and a gold crown. He glared fiercely around him. This was King Enma, whom Toshichin had heard about in rumors. Toshichin knelt there fearfully, wondering what would happen to him. "Listen, fellow. Why were you sitting on top of Mount Gabi?" King Enma's voice roared like thunder from above the stairs. Toshichin tried to answer the question immediately. But he remembered Tekanshi's warning, never speak a word. So he kept his head down and remained silent like a mute person. King Enma raised his iron staff and made his facial hair stand up in anger. "Where do you think you are? Answer me quickly. Otherwise, you will suffer the tortures of hell immediately." However, Toshichin did not move his lips at all. King Enma turned to the demons and gave a rough order. The demons obeyed at once, grabbed Toshichin, and flew into the sky above Shinra Palace. As everyone knows, hell has mountains of swords and lakes of blood. Under the dark sky, there are also valleys of flames called burning hell and seas of ice called freezing hell. The demons threw Toshichin into these places one after another. Toshichin suffered terrible tortures beyond count. Swords pierced his chest, flames burned his face, his tongue was pulled out, his skin was peeled off, iron hammers beat him, hot oil boiled him, poisonous snakes sucked his brain, and eagles ate his eyes. Even so, Toshichin endured patiently. He bit his teeth tightly and did not say a single word. Even the demons were amazed by his patience. They flew back through the night sky to Shinra Palace. Dragging Toshichin below the stairs, they reported together to King Enma. This sinner shows no intention of speaking at all. King Enma frowned and thought for a moment. Then he seemed to come up with an idea and ordered a demon. "This man's parents should be in the realm of beasts. Bring them here immediately." The demon flew into the sky on the wind. Soon it returned like a shooting star, driving two beasts down to Shinra Palace. Toshichin was shocked when he saw the beasts. Both were thin, miserable horses, but their faces belonged to his dead parents, whom he could never forget. "Listen. Tell me why you were sitting on Mount Gabi. If you do not confess honestly, I will make your parents suffer painful torture," King Enma threatened. Toshichin still did not answer. "You unfilial child. You do not care if your parents suffer as long as you are safe." King Enma roared so loudly that Shinra Palace shook. "Beat them, demons. Break the flesh and bones of those two beasts." The demons answered at once, grabbed iron whips, and stood up. They beat the two horses mercilessly from all directions. The whips cut through the air like rain, tearing the horse's skin and flesh everywhere. The horses, his parents reborn as beasts, twisted their bodies in pain. With bloody tears in their eyes, they neighed miserably. How about now? Will you still not confess? King Enma stopped the demons for a moment and asked Tashishin again. By that time, the two horses lay broken and bleeding near the stairs, barely breathing. Tashishin remembered Tekanshi's words and closed his eyes tightly, trying hard to endure. But at that moment, a very faint voice reached his ears. Do not worry about us. As long as you can be happy, nothing is better than that. No matter what the king says, stay silent if you do not want to speak. It was definitely his mother's loving voice. Tashishin opened his eyes involuntarily. He saw one of the horses lying helplessly on the ground, looking sadly at his face. Even in such terrible pain, his mother cared about her son's feelings and showed no resentment about being whipped. Compared to the people in the world who flattered the rich and ignored the poor, her love was deeply moving. Her determination was so noble. Tashishin forgot the old man's warning. He ran to her side, fell to his knees, and hugged the half-dead horse's neck. Tears poured from his eyes and he cried out loudly, "Mother!" When he regained his senses, Tashishin was standing under the west gate of Luoyang in the sunset light again. The misty sky, the white crescent moon, and the endless stream of people and carriages, everything was the same as before he went to Mount Gabi. Well, even if you became my disciple, you could never become an immortal wizard, could you? The old man with one squinted eye asked with a smile. I could not. I could not, but I am actually glad that I failed, Tashishin said. With tears still in his eyes, he held the old man's hand. Even if I could become an immortal wizard, I could not stay silent while seeing my parents whipped in front of Shinra Palace in hell. If you had stayed silent, Tekanshi's face suddenly became serious and he looked closely at Tashishin. If you had stayed silent, I would have killed you immediately. You no longer wish to become an immortal wizard, do you? And you are already tired of becoming rich. So, what do you want to become from now on? Whatever I become, I plan to live an honest, human life. Tashishin's voice had a bright, cheerful tone that was never there before. Do not forget those words. I will never meet you again after today. Tekanshi started walking away, but he stopped suddenly and turned back to Tashishin. Oh, luckily I just remembered. I own a house at the southern foot of Mount Taishan. I will give you that house along with the farm field. Go there and live right away. Peach blossoms are probably blooming all around the house right now. He added this with a very pleasant smile. The end.
最後までお聞きいただき、ありがとうございました。この後は、もう一度音声を聞きながら、シャドーイングや音読にも挑戦してみましょう。繰り返し学習することで、少しずつ英語が身についていきます。また次回の作品でお会いしましょう。ありがとうございました。